Hi class, this is Mrs. Allred, and I'm recording this video to help you with today's lesson. Today we're starting a new unit on ancient China, and in your Pearson Learning Core Knowledge, History, and Geography book, it's called The Dynasties of China. So in your history packet, you should have this first chapter called The First Emperor. You should have the unit notes, fill in the blank notes that go along with this, and you should also have a pencil ready to complete those notes as we go. Now I only have 15 minutes on this, so I'm mostly just going to read from the book, and I'd like you to follow along with me, and then pause it after each section to fill in the blanks, and the slides will also help you. It has some key words in there, some key bits of information that will help you fill in the blank. So we're just going to get started with the Emperor's Clay Army on page 154. In the spring of 1974, some villagers in central China needed a new well. The well diggers' muscles ached as they dug deeper and deeper into the reddish soil, looking for water. At 12 feet down, they hit something, but not water. It was a head, not a human head, but a life-size head made of terracotta or clay. Its face startled them because it looked so real, but it clearly came from an earlier time. The workers kept digging, and they eventually uncovered the complete figure of a Chinese warrior, buried for over 2,000 years. Archaeologists rushed to the side of the well. They carefully dug up the whole area. They found more clay soldiers, then still more, and clay horses too. In all, they found a whole army of life-size soldiers and horses, about 7,000 of them. Each warrior had his own personality. Some seemed angry, while others appeared cheerful. The soldiers wore armor made of clay. They carried real weapons, bows and arrows, swords, spears, and crossbows. The clay horses, their tails knotted and their ears leaning forward, seemed so real that you could practically hear them neighing and stomping their feet. Some pulled real wooden chariots. Guardians of the tomb. The clay army stood in silent formation, guarding the secret underground passageways leading to the tomb of the first emperor of China. Alert and ready for battle, they were to protect the emperor from evil spirits and robbers. If a robber did manage to break in, he might not get out alive. Stones and arrows would fly at him from booby traps set up inside the tomb. Chinese emperors hated robbers, and with good reason. The emperors had greater wealth than you could possibly imagine. They filled their palaces with treasures of all kinds, and they thought they would live this way even after they died. They believed that they would enter an afterlife that would be like their life on earth, so they buried their most valuable possessions with them: precious silks, priceless objects of jade or bronze, and musical instruments. Jade is a greenish mineral used as a gemstone, so they would use that in jewelry and probably to decorate their palaces, and priceless objects, like it says in the book. Over 700,000 workers built the first emperor's tomb and created his army of clay, and it took them almost 40 years to do it. The emperor did not want anyone to know about the tomb and its contents, so after he died, many workers in the underground tomb found that they could not get out. Walls and doors sealed them inside the tomb forever. They were buried alive just to keep a secret. Uniting the country. The first emperor frightened everyone. One of his own advisors said that the ruler had the voice of a jackal and the heart of a tiger or wolf. Named Zheng at birth, the emperor came from the northwestern Chinese state of Qin. When Zheng was a young boy, China was not a single unified country as it is today. Instead, many separate states existed, and they fought one another. Zheng became king of the state of Qin when he was 13. probably not much older than you are now. To keep his power, he had to fight wars with his neighbors. After ruling as king for 25 years, he defeated all the other states. In 221 BC, Zhang declared himself emperor of all of China and took the name Shi Huangdi, meaning first supreme emperor. Shi Huangdi established the Qin dynasty, named after his home state. Shi Huangdi had to be very tough to hold the new country together. His old enemies still hated him, so he commanded that all the weapons in the empire be brought to the capital city. He melted them all down and turned them into harmless bells and 12 enormous statues that he placed inside his palace. Shi Huangdi struggled to unite the many different states into one nation. Each of the old states had its own particular kind of writing, money, calendar, and system of weights and measures. This caused great confusion. However, how could you understand a written command from the emperor if you did not use the same kind of writing as he did? How could you make a date with a friend if he used a different calendar? Even the money was different all over China. Some places used coins in the shape of knives, while others used coins shaped like shovels or fish or small scallop shells. Which one was the most valuable? And if you or your neighbors measured out grain differently, who decided which was the right amount? Shi Huangdi eliminated all of those differences. He insisted that all people use the same written language so that everyone in the empire could understand each other. Shi Huangdi declared that all coins must be round with a square hole in the middle so that coins could be strung together. The emperor established one calendar and one single system of weighing and measuring goods that everyone had to follow. Shi Huangdi wanted to travel easily throughout his empire, so he ordered the building of canals to connect the great water wells of China. He also commanded that the roads be built, 4,000 miles of them. Trees lining the roads provided shade for travelers. The emperor controlled even the tiniest things. He insisted that the wheels of carriages had to be a precise distance apart from each other so that they would fall exactly into the wheel ruts already worn into the roads. Those were all good things. He was also known as a very cruel ruler. Such improvements made life easier for the Chinese people, but the emperor could also be very cruel. He hated crime, and people who broke the laws were punished in horrible ways. They included being boiled alive, having the ribs torn out of one's chest, being cut in two at the waist, and being torn apart by chariots driving in opposite directions. The emperor punished not only the criminal, but his entire family as well. He held all of them responsible. Shi Huangdi hated any ideas that were different from his own, and he hated it when scholars looked back on the past and said life was better back then. He had every book of history, philosophy, and literature in all of China collected and burned. He commanded that 460 scholars be killed, just because he thought they objected to what he was doing. Even the emperor's own son was upset, and he told his father it was wrong to be so cruel. But you shouldn't talk back to your parents, especially if the parent is a tyrant. A tyrant is a ruler who rules in harsh, cruel manner. Shi Huangdi became angry at his son and sent him far away, all the way to the northern edge of China. So you can see this picture is in your book. And this is a picture, it depicts the scholars being buried alive. The wall builder. Shi Huangdi gave his son a job to keep him busy. He told him to supervise the construction of a series of walls in northern China. Some old walls were already standing. Shi Huangdi wanted to connect some of these walls and build new ones. The wall building did not end with Shi Huangdi. Later dynasties built more walls. The Chinese worked on these walls for almost 2,000 years. The rulers of the Ming Dynasty built the last and most elaborate ones. These Ming Dynasty walls are the ones that we usually think of as the Great Wall of China. But the work had begun many years earlier, and the Chinese honor Shi Huangdi as the first great wall builder. The Great Wall snakes through China's mountains and deserts for over 1,000 miles. According to legend, the wall was designed by a dragon. You can understand why when you see the photograph like the one above. Put your finger on the wall and follow it. See how it twists and turns like the tail of a dragon. Why in the world would anyone need such gigantic walls? Well, one thing the walls can do is say, keep out. And that's why Shi Huangdi ordered the walls built, to keep out the people who lived beyond the northern border of China. The Europeans called these northern people the Huns. The Chinese called them the Xiongnu. The Xiongnu were nomads, which meant they had no permanent homes and moved from place to place. They moved around on their great herds of horses, riding like the wind. They wandered the open grasslands called steppes, in search of good grass for their horses to eat. Steppes were vast treeless plains extending from southwestern Europe into Central Asia. When they found a place where they wanted to stay briefly, they would set up a large tent-like house called a yurt that they could take down quickly when they were ready to move. In contrast, the Chinese at that time led settled lives. Most of them were farmers who lived in the fertile valleys of the Yellow River in the north and the Yangtze River further south. They rarely left their farms and villages to settle. To the settled Chinese, the nomadic Xiongnu seemed like barbarians. The Xiongnu were fierce warriors. They would mount their swift horses and swoop down on Chinese villages, raiding and stealing from people who lived there. Shi Huangdi was determined to protect China from these northern raiders, and so he started building walls. He sent 300,000 soldiers and workers, including criminals, who had to march hundreds of miles in chains to the northern border. Many died on the way, and once they got there, there was no food. Half starved, the men had to work anyway. The emperor didn't care. He just wanted to get the walls built as soon as possible. So the work never stopped, even during blizzards and sandstorms and freezing rain. Many workers died from hunger and exhaustion. Dead workers became part of the walls. Their bones were mixed in with the stones. If you complained or tried to run away, you would be caught and buried alive inside one of the walls. For this reason, the walls have been called the world's largest graveyard. Searching for immortality. In his later years, the emperor himself became more and more worried about dying. Shi Huangdi was determined to find a magic potion that would make him live forever. He sent out several sea expeditions in search of islands that were supposed to hold the secret of immortality. Of course, the expeditions failed. In his capital city, Shi Huangdi had built 270 different palaces and gardens for himself. They were all connected by covered passageways. The emperor became so fearful that he slept in a different palace every night. He moved secretly, and no one except his closest advisors knew where he was. Anyone revealing the emperor's whereabouts would be put to death, and the informer's whole family would die as well. Shi Huangdi became completely mysterious during his lifetime, and even his death remained a secret. The emperor died while on his way home from a long trip. Only a few advisors knew about it, and they didn't want anyone else to find out. The only problem was that the emperor's decaying body was beginning to smell. How could they hide that? They came up with a plan to have a cart full of rotten fish follow the emperor's carriage until they got back to the capital. That way, people would think